Just imagine a life of luxury, a millionaire father, and 5 sisters who are simply the most desired girls in school. Sounds like a dream, right? But then, out of nowhere, the father drops the bomb. No one there is a blood relative. They were all adopted. And to make things worse, or better, depending on the point of view, some of those ex-sisters take the chance to confess that they've always had a crush on you. Yep, this is the crazy story of our protagonist, Arata. The anime begins by showing an elite neighborhood in Tokyo, focusing on an absurd mansion that belongs to a successful businessman. That's where 7 siblings live together, surrounded by employees who keep everything spotless. Among this crew, we have Arata and Shion, the only 2 boys in the house. Arata, kind of lost in the world of romance, turns to Shion and asks the classic question, "How do you get a girlfriend, man?" Shion, who's more experienced, laughs and says, "Arata just needs to have a silver tongue." Then he brings up the girl Arata was interested in, and Arata, all innocent, says he only told her she was pretty and nothing more. That's when Shion teases him, saying Arata is way too passive for someone who's the eldest son and heir of the powerful Zundi family. In his mind, Arata could choose any girl he wanted, but Arata defends himself, saying it's not about being slow. He still believes in destiny, as if a perfect girl would just appear in his life. At that moment, the 5 perfect sisters show up, and Uka immediately cuts the mood, asking what those 2 guys are gossiping about so early. In her view, that doesn't match the dignity expected of heirs of the Zungi family. Seiha joins in, saying that, actually boys' conversations are like 10% hobbies, 30% girls, and 60% sex. In other words, easy to guess what they were talking about. Minami, who never misses a chance, adds that now she finally understands boys. 80% of their conversations are about girls. Then Banri, considered the most gorgeous of all, corrects her sister, saying she exaggerated a bit. And the shy Kotono? Well, she just stays quiet in the middle of all the chaos. But Uka, never holding back, blurts out that Arata probably just wanted Shion to tell him all the juicy details about his relationship. After all, the younger brother has a girlfriend, and he doesn't. That leaves Arata totally embarrassed. And it gets worse when Shion reveals that Arata had been saying Uka already has a woman's body. Result, Uka orders her dog, Vei, to teach him a lesson. And man, the dog actually bites Arata's butt. They even tell the dog to rip his balls off because, according to her, he deserves it for being such a pervert. The other sisters laugh and say he deserved it for thinking dirty thoughts about them. Arata, all wrecked after the bite, gets up outraged, saying he'd never have such thoughts about his sisters. But Uka quickly counters, reminding him of something inappropriate he once did with Kotono. The others confirm that he almost got sent to the dreaded room number 8 because of it. Arata is left super awkward. Banri tries to ease the tension, saying it's normal for a virgin teenager like Arata to get caught up in these confusions, but the sisters don't forgive him, saying being a virgin doesn't give him a free pass to act like a creep. Seiha, always sticking to science, mentions that incest is a genetic bomb, and that if Arata really wanted to hook up with one of his sisters, their kids could be born all messed up. But then Banri, who already showed she has a mind way out of the box, says there are things in the human mind even science can't explain. She even throws some shade, saying maybe even Seiha has fallen in love before, leaving her sister blushing. Suddenly, Minami turns against everyone and asks them to stop. She even defends Arata, saying he's a nice and handsome guy. Arata, happy with the compliment, tries to hug her but gets punched instead. She was playing a fighting game and just wanted to test something out. Banri also defends Arata, saying he's a nice and handsome guy, and that the sisters should go easier on him since, from the very beginning of the anime, he's only been beaten up and humiliated. Then Uka asks if the 2 brothers are free on Saturday because there's going to be karaoke to celebrate Kotono's birthday. Shion replies that it's fine for him since his date is only on Sunday, and nobody even lets Arata answer because, well, nobody cares. But Minami is concerned and asks him. Arata says he had an appointment but can cancel to attend the birthday. It's pretty clear she's starting to see him differently, right? Those who are quiet always hide the most dangerous intentions. Anyway, the 7 agree to go together. On the scheduled day, they're all at the station waiting for the train. Meanwhile, some boys are admiring the girls, commenting on how beautiful they are, saying it's almost a miracle to see them all together. They even say they've already been invited to appear on TV. They also comment that Arata and Shion are lucky to live with such beauties. Upon arriving at school, Arata complains because he overheard the boys talking behind their backs. But Shion bluntly tells him that's normal, since people only look at appearances and don't see the chaos inside the house of the 7 siblings. Then Arata admits that those guys really have no idea what it's like growing up with 5 sisters hovering around, each just a year apart from the other. To him, they're always right, he's always wrong. Living in that environment feels like being in constant war. But since they're all gorgeous, outsiders can only imagine his life as a rom-com in harem format. That's when Shion gives his detailed analysis of each sister. Banri, the eldest. She's 18 already. In her first year at a top university, with a gentle aura that wins everyone over. She's loved by people of all ages, like a social magnet. The second is Seha, 17, in her final year of high school, president of the science club, top grades in school, and she carries a cold, serious, elegant vibe. And of course, that makes her super popular too. Then comes Auka, also 17, in her second year of high school. Smart, athletic, star of the track and swimming teams, and on top of that, the favorite to be the next student council president. A true complete package. Minami, the fourth oldest, is 15 and in her first year of high school. She won the middle school tennis championship 3 years in a row and has a tomboyish style that even girls love. Everyone bets she might become an Olympic athlete someday. And finally, the youngest of them all, Kotono, 14, in her last year of middle school. With her shy demeanor and delicate looks, she seems like she walked straight out of a romance anime. Always surrounded by fans, she's treated like a true treasure. Even with Cheyon's full analysis of the sisters, Arata drops the classic, "I can't see them any other way than as my sisters." But is that really true, Cheon? Then asks what happened between him and Kotono. Arata replies that he had no choice but to reject her since she confessed she liked him. The tension rises when suddenly Arata runs into his childhood friend, and just seeing her makes his heart race. Cheon doesn't hold back and teases him, says Arata has childhood traumas that made him all awkward with women, straight to the point. Later, lying in bed, Arata thinks about adding the girl he likes on social media, but ends up giving up because he doesn't see a good reason to send a request. At that moment, Uka walks into the room and sees her brother doing homework. She sits next to him, and Arata, sneaky or not, glances at her body and blurts out that she shouldn't be wearing such light clothes. But she replies casually, saying they're at home, that they even bathed together as kids, so she'll wear whatever she wants. She asks who the girl he's into is, and distracted, he lets it slip. Okoyama, the hottest girl he's ever seen. Coincidence of fate. Okoyama is in the same committee as her, so naturally she starts planning a meeting between them for the weekend. But Arata immediately cuts her off, saying he doesn't need her help, that he has his own way of doing things. That leaves Uka a bit irritated since she just wanted to help. After all, he's the heir of the family. Meanwhile, in her room, Kotono is looking at a picture of Arata with the face of someone completely in love. The next day after class, Arata walks alone, wondering what his life would be like if he didn't have those 5 sisters. He sees his childhood friend with a new boyfriend and wonders if he'll ever be able to find someone too. Later at night, all the siblings are called for an important family meeting organized by their father. On the way, Arata bumps into Uka, who compliments the suit he's wearing. He goes down to the mansion's main floor and finds the table set with everyone gathered. But before any toast or dinner, Uka starts an argument with Minami because she lost her borrowed headphones. The fight escalates, and Arata, as the oldest brother, tries to calm things down, reminding them they are a family and should act like one. Then their father appears and says he needs to tell them something important before they start eating. He says he wanted to reveal this on Kotono's 15th birthday, but now feels it's the right time. And he adds that no matter what he's about to reveal, his love for each of them remains the same before dropping. They are not real siblings. They were all adopted. He reveals that he had promised Cyril that he would tell them when Kotono turned 15. And he also says that, except for Minami and Cheon, who are blood twins, no one there shares biological ties. The atmosphere grows heavy. The father apologizes for keeping it a secret for so long and says that from now on, he will only tell the truth. The maid comes in to serve dinner, but no one seems to believe what they've just heard. Later, they all drink some tea to try to digest the revelation. They start talking, and Uka says she feels betrayed for having been deceived all this time. The environment becomes tense. Minami tries to lighten the mood, cracking a joke to ease the pressure. Since Banri is the oldest and the first to have been adopted, everyone asks if she remembers anything about the adoption process. She thinks for a moment, seems to know something, but ends up saying that even without blood ties, everyone there is and will always be siblings to her. With that, the conversation ends, and each one goes to their room. But Arata's head won't stop spinning. After all, he just discovered that the people he grew up with for over 15 years have no blood relation to him. They are technically strangers. Trying to clear his mind after the bomb he just received, Arata decides to take a bath to calm down. On the way to the bathroom, he sees some women's clothes hanging, probably one of his sisters. But he thinks, we grew up together. We're old enough to deal with this just fine. So he goes into the bathroom anyway, but as soon as he opens the door, he gets a huge scare. Kotono is inside. She's startled too, quickly covers herself, but strangely doesn't tell him to leave. On the contrary, with that shy demeanor, she asks him to wash her back, like he always used to do when they were younger. Arata, even embarrassed, helps and jokes that if their classmates found out she still doesn't know how to wash her own back, they would laugh a lot. Kotono feels embarrassed but also happy. After all, she really likes him. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Uka and Cheon are talking about Kotono. They're both worried about the fact that she learned everything about the adoption right on her birthday, just when she should be focusing on entrance exams. Uka asks what Cheon thinks about all that, And of course, he takes the chance to tease her, asking why she cares so much about Arata's opinion. Uka, visibly emotional, says it's because they lived 16 years believing they were twins. To her, Arata has always been like her other half. Shion replies that everything is fine with Arata, that he will continue being the heir of the family, the eldest brother of all. But he also warns that now society might start looking at them differently. After all, without blood ties, theoretically, they could even marry each other. And it's at this exact moment that chaos begins. Kotono, back in the bath, grabs Arata from behind. Meanwhile, in the living room, Uka and Shion continue arguing. Uka says she's horrified by the possibility of something like that happening, but comments that technically there isn't a law in Japan that prohibits marriages between adoptive siblings since there's no blood connection. Shocked, she says she didn't expect to hear that kind of disgusting thought from her own brother. Shion tries to calm things down, saying he's just grateful to have a sister like her, beautiful and kind. But Uka reminds him that Arata has already made comments about the way she dresses at home, which only reinforces the idea that he's an incorrigible pervert. She takes the opportunity to ask about that mysterious day in the game room between Arata and Kotono. Apparently, they caught Arata on top of her, and only Shion knows what really happened. He says it's a secret, but Uka insists, and she herself answers that she knows Arata would never force anyone. They just like to mess with him. Then Shion reveals the truth. Kotono liked Arata. Uka is shocked and screams. Shion asks her to lower her voice and explains that, of course, Arata rejected her, but Kotono didn't take the no well and clung to him that day. He was only trying to shake her off when they were caught. Uka is surprised by her little sister. She always thought Kotono was the most innocent in the house, but admits that sometimes she has unexpected outbursts. Shion comments that Arata didn't tell anyone the truth to avoid hurting Kotono. After all, if it's true she's really in love, that complicates everything. Even without blood ties, they are still siblings in daily life. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Kotono is still clinging to Arata. He's completely uncomfortable, and she, as if nothing were strange, hugs him tighter and confesses. She says she loves him with all her heart. Arata tries to pull away, scared by the situation, but she insists, saying she researched on the internet and found out that, according to Japanese law, adoptive siblings can marry. So technically, nothing is stopping them. Arata finally breaks free, still shocked, and sees Kotono's face full of tears. She asks if he thinks she's a bad girl now, but Arata answers gently. He says she's not bad, that many teenagers get confused about their own feelings, especially when they grow up so close to someone. And even if they don't share the same blood, he's still her older brother. And as such, what he wants most is to see her happy, even on the day she walks down the aisle to live her own story. He ends by saying he'll forget what happened there and asks her to finish her bath in peace. Kotono, frustrated and hurt, leaves grumbling, saying she wanted to be crushed. Yes, with those very words, complaining that Arata is too nice and at the same time annoying because deep down she hoped her confession would change something between them. Arata, with his mind fried, leaves the bathroom very quietly. But someone saw him coming out, and the way the scene looked, it seemed much more suspicious than it really was. The scene cuts abruptly to the father of the family, who is in his office when Banri walks in. Meanwhile, Arata still can't believe what just happened with Kotono. In his mind, it's all the parents' fault. If they hadn't told them they weren't real siblings, none of this would be happening. Even after everything that happened, Arata still couldn't erase the affection he felt for his sisters. As much as he knew they weren't tied by blood, he grew up with them, shared joys, fights, and memories. It was impossible to pretend all of that didn't exist. When he entered his room, he got startled. Seiha was sitting on his bed, as if it were her place. You know you're in the wrong room, right? And throwing yourself on someone else's bed like that isn't exactly polite, said Arata, frowning. Seiha, with her usual direct way, replied, If you've got something to hide, just lock the door. Where were you? The question caught Arata off guard. He froze for a second, trying not to show his nervousness. After all, he had just gone through an uncomfortable situation with Kotono and didn't want to raise more suspicion. Just walking around, taking a stroll, he tried to deflect. Seiha, no fool, noticed something strange in his words and changed the subject. Your room is the smallest in the house, but it has a charm. It even looks bigger than it is. She brought up an old memory. Remember when we were 10 and played rock, paper, scissors to decide the rooms? Uka won the biggest and you got the smallest. Good thing you're not the type to hoard stuff. Arata gave a forced laugh and joked, Doing a tour of a boy's room now? Gonna start a live stream? I'm not really into lives, she replied without showing much emotion. Arata began to wonder what Seiha really wanted. As the second oldest in the house, she had always been the most centered. Maybe she wanted to talk about the father's revelation, but she didn't seem like the type of person to casually start that kind of conversation. Suddenly, Seiha came closer and lightly pushed Arata onto the bed, looking straight into his eyes. Stay quiet. This needs to be kept secret. Arata, surprised by her approach, was completely confused. In his mind, Everything was turning upside down. He thought, what's happening with this house, with these girls? Seha, who had always been reserved, was acting in a completely different way. Could she also have been influenced by the conversation with Kotono? Relax, nothing serious is happening here, said Seha as if reading his thoughts. That's when she dropped it. I saw you two in the bathroom, you and Kotono. Arata was shocked. How much did you see? Enough. I was going to take a bath and heard you talking. The wall isn't that thick. Arata backed away, afraid of what that might mean, but Seha reassured him. I had already noticed Kotono was confused. Sometimes too much affection can be mistaken for something else, especially in adolescence. I'm not here to judge, she continued, and honestly, I think you handled it in the best way. But if this happens again, how will we know you'll act the right way? Arata understood she was testing him, not out of malice, but to make sure her sisters would be safe. You couldn't think of a less weird way to do this? He asked, still annoyed. It was the most direct method. I don't have any feelings for you, so it was neutral for me, Seha replied as if she were talking about an equation. Are you crazy, Seha? Seriously? She, impassive, started to ramble about culture and laws. Marriage between siblings is prohibited by law in Japan, but that has more to do with tradition than biology. Science says children of parents with greater genetic diversity are healthier. That's why, to avoid any wrong ideas, we need to make it clear that this kind of relationship must not happen here in any way. Arata felt uncomfortable with that weird speech. She continued, even so, I know Kotono is still young and might not fully understand the gravity of this, but we need to be clear, talk openly with her without fear, until she understands. Arata replied, that doesn't justify what you just did. But Seha didn't stop. Marriage between cousins, for example, is still common in some places. The point is, everyone here, except for Minami and Shion, now live in a space where technically there is no legal barrier. But just because something isn't illegal doesn't mean it's right. He felt even more unsettled. Relax, I'm just explaining the facts. I'm not saying I think this is acceptable. Actually, it gives me chills just thinking about it. But maybe Kotono felt that opening after our father's talk. Seha stood up and walked to the door. Anyway, I'm glad you kept control. Am I still your older sister on paper or not? Then make sure to call me with a little more affection, okay? She said with a slight enigmatic smile. After she left, Arata could only collapse onto his bed, exhausted. The night had been far too long. He murmured to himself, I understood what she meant. Maybe any other guy in a house full of girls without blood ties would try to take advantage. But no, I've lived as their brother my whole life. Nothing's going to change overnight. The next morning, Arata woke up with his brain boiling. It had been too much to process in such a short time. Still groggy, he left his room for school and ran into Kotono and Banri in the hallway, acting strangely. And the day was only just beginning. The two were wearing something different than usual. Arata, curious, asked what that was. Banri explained naturally that the uniform of the new school had just arrived, and she was just trying it on, while Kotono was wearing the spare. Then she teased a little. So, what do you think? Boys usually like this kind of look. Arata, trying to keep his composure, looked away and answered quickly. That's not something you should ask your brother, is it? Right after, he left the house with Shion on the way to school. During the walk, Shion commented that Banri was probably trying to lighten the mood after the bomb from the previous day. On the way, they overheard some boys saying they wanted to date any of Arata's sisters. They talked about their beauty and said they envied the brothers for living in the same house. Shion, half teasing, threw in, ever thought about what would happen if they found out you're not really siblings? Arata quickly asked him to keep his voice down, but Shion continued, you're telling me they're okay with all this? I bet they're just as confused as we are. Despite the light tone, Arata was still processing everything. That wasn't something easy to get over overnight. He knew Shion didn't have the full picture of the situation, but he imagined the sisters were also shaken by their father's revelation. Minami suddenly appeared, which caught Arata's attention. After all, she was always in training, and that was the first time in years he had seen her free. He narrated mentally to himself that Minami was the fourth oldest, the most cheerful and carefree among the sisters. She was the type who could have fun in any situation, but at the same time was a 3-time champion of the tennis tournament and seen as a future Olympic athlete. The pressure on her must have been insane. Near the school, a group of girls ran up to Minami asking for autographs and wanting to take pictures with her. Arata, not understanding much, asked, who are these girls? Minami explained that when she enrolled, she ended up taking her ID photo in the boys' uniform, and that sparked curiosity throughout the school, especially among other female students. Arata even felt a little jealous. He couldn't get any attention from anyone, while his younger sister became an idol without even trying. He asked if she was going straight home after class, since she had a rare free time. But Minami explained it wasn't exactly a break. She had done poorly on the placement test, and the coach had freed her from practice so she could study. Despite being a brilliant athlete, she was the one who struggled the most with grades among the siblings. With no other choice, Arata decided to help her study, and the chosen place was a karaoke. There, he sat beside her, focused on the mission. Observing her up close, he realized Minami really was beautiful, something he didn't always notice in everyday life. He gave her a math test to solve, but she got everything wrong. Arata then realized that there really weren't blood ties between them, which made him feel a bit uneasy about how natural that closeness was. But before the mood could get awkward, Minami ignored the studying, jumped up excitedly, and went to sing. She had queued up a song, one of those that make fun of people who get low grades. The choice was an inside joke between her and her friends. At that moment, Arata understood that even facing pressure and emotional confusion, Minami was able to enjoy life. She was perhaps the lightest and most fun person he could spend time with. On the way back from karaoke, the mood changed abruptly. Arata saw his childhood friend, the only girl he had truly loved, with another guy. The sight knocked the ground out from under him. Minami noticed her brother was shaken and started talking. "I'm still trying to digest everything that happened yesterday. It was way too much information." Arata asked what she thought about the fact that they weren't real siblings. She replied that she still didn't understand why their father had lied for so long, but now she wanted to find out who her biological parents were. She also said she was worried about Kotono for being the youngest and most sensitive of them all. Then, jokingly, Minami commented, "Look at that. Now you're not my older brother anymore, just an older guy at school." But then she added, "Jokes aside, for me what really counts are the bonds we built in these 15 years. That's what truly has value." That comment made Arata reflect. Minami always saw the bright side of things, and suddenly she looked directly at him. "And don't stay down like that, okay? I saw that the girl you like is already with someone else. I know how hard that is." Arata's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "She told me herself," Minami replied, laughing. "Turns out I'm pretty good at getting information." Even so, she tried to cheer him up. "You're smart, funny, responsible. You just need to believe in yourself more. When we get home, let's play that fighting game." Later, Minami appeared in Uka's room carrying a cake box and some headphones she had found lost in the club room. She apologized for the previous fight, and the two finally made up. Then they went downstairs to eat together since there was too much food for just one. The next day, Arata was brushing his teeth, taking care of his hygiene carefully. When he left the bathroom, he ran into Kotono, who was acting as if nothing had happened in recent days. He found her behavior curious, as if she were completely ignoring the delicate episode. Then Seiha appeared and commented, "Teenagers are like that. But the way Kotono is now, she could end up becoming a really complicated mess in your life." Arata stayed silent. He knew that, even though everyone was trying to act normal, the storm was far from over. A short time later, they all went to an amusement park and had a lot of fun. After splitting up, Arata was alone with Banri, and they decided to get something to eat. Banri then asked Arata what he thought about the whole revelation of the adoption. Arata hesitated for a moment. There were things he had experienced with his sisters in the last few days that he preferred to keep to himself. In the end, he answered sincerely, "I'm worried about all this too. It's strange to think we're adopted, but even so, I don't want anything to change because to me you're still my sisters and always will be." Hearing that, Banri smiled emotionally and threw herself on him in a tight hug, saying he was really cute. She recalled how in the past he always came running to her whenever he felt bad. Arata replied with a shy smile, "But I've grown up now. That kind of thing doesn't suit me anymore." She laughed and said she worried about everyone because they were still in high school, a confusing stage full of changes. Then she confessed, revealing that since she found out she was the eldest of the Zundi family, she had made a promise to herself, to protect the bond we had built, no matter what. Arata then realized something he had always known but never stopped to reflect on. Banri had always been there for him, always defended him from the others when things got tough. And that's why he spoke from the heart. "Of all of them, you're the most admirable." Already getting ready to leave, Banri stood up, but suddenly a little girl running with a cup in her hands came out of nowhere and almost bumped into her. To keep her from getting soaked, Arata reflexively stepped in front and ended up getting wet himself. Banri rushed to help him, trying to dry him off as best as she could, laughing at the situation. Arata, drenched, looked at her firmly and said, "This time I'm the one who's going to protect you because I'm your younger brother, right?" That sentence made Banri shine, realizing how much Arata had matured. Right after, the other sisters showed up and reunited with the two. Everyone was startled to see Arata wet, and he explained what had happened. With the group together, there was still time to enjoy the park a bit more, so they decided to head to the next attraction. On the way, Banri shyly asked if she could hold Arata's hand. He was left speechless, but before he could say anything, she had already intertwined her fingers with his. Later, already resting after many rides, Arata said he needed to go to the bathroom, and Cheyenne decided to go with him. Kotono, upon hearing this, offered to go too, leaving the other sisters together. And it was precisely in their absence that Seiha took the floor and decided to tell what she knew. Calmly, she revealed to the sisters that she had seen Arata and Kotono in the bathroom that day, and that he had confirmed what happened. She also said that, according to Arata himself, it was just a moment of confusion, and that he tried to calm her down, like any older brother would. Uka, confused, asked how Seiha knew that Arata hadn't had any reaction besides concern. That's when Seiha replied very naturally that she had recreated a similar situation just to observe. She approached him, measured his reaction, and noticed that his heartbeat remained normal. The sisters were stunned. Banri widened her eyes in surprise. "Wait, you actually tested that?" Seiha confirmed, saying she believed it was important to understand the situation since they all lived together and were going through something delicate. She explained that it had been an impulsive act by Kotono, probably influenced by her age and the emotional confusion everyone was feeling after their father's revelation. The sisters began to discuss what they should do about it. Minami suggested that even so, it was important to lightly scold Kotono to help her understand her own feelings. Seiha then said that the best thing would be not to tell Kotono that they all already knew. According to her, that would only make Kotono panic. Banri agreed, saying that keeping Kotono's emotional balance was the most important thing. That's when Uka made a revelation. She told them that the episode when Arata was caught on top of her had in fact been caused by Kotono, and that he took all the blame even though he was innocent. The sisters were outraged. Seiha commented that now that Kotono knew she wasn't related by blood, that probably fueled even more of her impulsive behavior. Banri, however, asked for calm. She said that despite everything, what Kotono felt seemed to be the result of emotional confusion mixed with a possible true feeling. "She's in love," Banri said with a sigh. "And we were also shaken when we discovered we weren't blood siblings. Imagine her." The sisters agreed they needed to find a way to guide Kotono with care and empathy, without pressure, but also without ignoring what was happening. Soon after, the group that had gone to the bathroom returned, and everyone went together to the last attraction of the day, the haunted house of the park. As they walked there, Minami and Seiha were excitedly discussing who would be the first to win the park's themed stuffed animal. Arata, watching everything, thought to himself that Kotono had, for the most part, calmed down, and that relieved him. For the first time in days, he hadn't been put in a compromising situation by her. But he also knew that this calm came from internal confusion. That revelation that they were all adopted was still messing with everyone's minds. Even he took time to accept it. At first, he didn't want to believe it. But now, there at the park, with everyone laughing and having fun, things seemed to have gone back to normal. Arata reflected. Could it be that their father feared that the revelation would break the bonds they had built? Whatever the reason, hiding that for so many years certainly hadn't been easy. And even without fully understanding everything, he decided to forgive him. Inside, he promised that nothing would change, no matter what blood or paperwork said. With that thought, he decided to enjoy the rest of the night at the park alongside his siblings. Later, while passing by a stuffed animal shop, Arata once again saw the girl he loved and next to her, her boyfriend. His heart sank. He froze, staring from afar, until he was interrupted by Uka, who noticed the paleness on her brother's face and asked worriedly. The two moved a little away from the rest of the group. Uka spoke in a more serious tone. "I have something important to tell you, Arata. We were raised believing we were twins. 16 years like that. There are many unresolved things between us that we now need to talk about." But Arata, touched, quickly replied, "Don't say that. I still consider you my twin sister. That hasn't changed for me and never will." Uka was silent for a few seconds, then began speaking in a lighter tone. "Remember how we always thought we had some kind of telepathy? We said it was because we shared the same womb. We always knew what the other was going to do. That day we played rock, paper, scissors 10 times in a row and tied every single one. Everyone said that was a twin thing." Arata smiled, remembering that, but what came next caught him by surprise. "Arata, I like you." Those words came out of Uka's mouth almost in a whisper, but loaded with feeling. A few days later, our protagonist was back to his school routine, going about the day calmly. But then Shion came into the scene, clearly following the playbook of the problematic brother with twisted thoughts. He bluntly said, "Have you ever stopped to think if at some point you stopped seeing your sisters as sisters and started seeing them as normal girls?" Yes, he really said that. And the worst, he justified it by saying that now, knowing they weren't blood-related, technically they were just ordinary girls with whom he had a lot of intimacy. He even pointed out that Kotono had already said she liked him even before they knew they were adopted. But then Arata came in and immediately cut him off. He said that thought had never crossed his mind, that he couldn't forgive that kind of thinking, and that surely his brother didn't think that way either. He justified it by saying that Shion was already in a relationship, so he didn't need those ideas. Arata, a bit suspicious, asked since when Shion had been dating, still teasing him with that affectionate nickname talk. Shion proudly replied that there was always something going on between him and his girlfriend, that every day with her was an adventure. That made our protagonist even more curious, and of course, he started daydreaming, wishing he had someone too, which ended up feeding some twisted thoughts in his head. But then came the bomb. Shion said he had already told Uka everything about his thing with Kotono. Arata froze on the spot and went into panic mode, thinking she would never believe his innocence. But Shion tried to calm him down, saying he should trust his ex-twin, that she would never believe he had really done something wrong. That made Arata think that Uka was a true tsundere. She knew the truth, but even so, she kept picking on him. He even commented that, as he said the day before yesterday, they had been siblings for 16 years, and just because they discovered they were adopted, that didn't erase the bond they had built. But of course, Shion came back with that twisted thought, and said that if the boys at school found out the real situation of the family, they would be filled with envy and want to beat Arata up, because he lived with 5 beautiful girls, the dream of any guy at school. Arata, of course, told him to shut up and not tell anyone. At that moment, he started remembering that specific night and thought that all this seemed more like the plot of a romantic comedy. Despite the confusion, he knew that Uka only wanted to make it clear that even though she kept picking on him, and now knowing they weren't blood siblings, she still felt proud to be his twin sister. She even mentioned that Shion had told her what happened between him and Kotono, and that she was proud of the way he handled it, like a true older brother. After all, Kotono was still young, so no one was at fault. And that's when Arata realized, in reality, Uka had just been praising him all along. That calmed his heart, because it reinforced that to her, they were only siblings, and she had never had any intention of falling in love with him. So he asked the question, "You're a tsundere, aren't you?" Which seemed true. But Uka got irritated, quickly changed the subject, said she was going to the bathroom, and walked away. Arata kept wondering about her strange behavior, and soon understood that she was afraid their relationship would change. That made him remember what Shion said, that he could date any of his sisters since they weren't really related, and then his mind short-circuited. Meanwhile, Uka went to the bathroom with a red face, remembering that, like it or not, she had ended up confessing to Arata, and that messed with her, especially because she remembered Seiha had already said that Kotono had been more direct, had confessed, and even clung to Arata. Uka felt that what she did was embarrassing. Back to the present, our protagonist was at the mansion's gym. He was lifting weights when Minami showed up and asked how he was. Arata, of course, teased her for working out even on a Sunday morning. She replied that it was part of the routine since she was an athlete, and even praised Arata, saying that even without being a professional, he had never missed a workout. He replied that he had been training since childhood, and felt bad when he skipped, but then revealed to us that he was actually buried in the gym because he had so much on his mind. Minami commented that maybe he was overtraining because of what their father used to say, that a true leader takes care of himself first. The two used to train together late at night, but Arata changed the subject and said she was the only one who kept that discipline every day. That's why she was so successful, and he admired her a lot. That made Minami blush, and she changed the subject too. Suddenly she remembered that night at the amusement park, when she was with her sisters buying stuffed animals. When she went out to look for Arata and Uka, she caught the scene of the confession. And now, right in front of the womanizer brother, she didn't even know what to say. She couldn't ask directly about what happened with Uka, so she shifted focus and started training again. But curiosity got the better of her, and she blurted out, "Did something happen between you and Uka?" Without imagining that she knew about the confession, Arata answered innocently. He said that despite their little fights, he and Uka got along really well. Minami pretended to swallow the answer, acted naturally, and left the room, but outside she was frustrated for not being able to really touch on the subject. After all, even if their relationship seemed the same, Uka had said she loved Arata. Later, Arata left his room thinking about taking that relaxing Sunday bath, but Minami's question still echoed in his mind. Why did she want to know that right now? He wondered if she had noticed any change in the atmosphere between him and Uka. Since the day their father revealed the truth about their family, Arata had been thoughtful, thinking Minami was acting strange because of the upcoming school tournaments. He really worried about her. But suddenly, his plan to relax in his sacred Sunday bath went down the drain, literally, when he entered the bathroom and found Seiha changing clothes. The door was wide open, and she had simply forgotten to close it. Arata freaked out, scolded her, saying she needed to stop doing that kind of absurd thing. But Seiha, as always, kept that cold and calculating manner. She continued undressing as if nothing was happening, and even dropped a philosophical quote. According to an author she had read, "Man is a being that gets used to everything." That's why Arata's shock, as he crouched in the corner of the bathroom, even surprised Seiha herself. She actually apologized, saying that if her body, which he had already seen 1,000 times, was bothering him, then she was sorry. Arata sighed in relief, glad the situation hadn't gotten even more embarrassing. He tried to leave quickly, but noticed a piece of women's clothing on the floor. He picked it up to put it in the basket, and at that moment, he remembered what Uka had once said, that his sisters' bodies were part of the house's furniture. With that in mind, he forgave the mess. He found it a little strange that Seiha was bathing at that unusual hour for her, but then thought that she never cared about that kind of thing like kinship or blood ties. She was the type who wouldn't change for anyone. That's when he noticed their mother's ring on her finger and asked if it still fit. Seiha replied yes, but that it was a little loose. Even so, she said it was a very important keepsake of their mother. Arata commented that, although she was the second oldest, she probably didn't remember their mother as much as he did, but he was sure she carried a huge affection for her in her heart. After that, he said goodbye, saying he needed to take a shower to wash off the sweat and would go back to training afterwards. The next day, Arata was completely wrecked, lying in bed. He had seriously overdone his training, but like a magnet for trouble, Banri suddenly showed up in his room. And like all his sisters, she was also acting a little suspicious. She started chatting about the past, remembering when their father scolded him for leaving crumbs on the floor. Arata, already tired, asked straight up what she wanted. She replied that she just wanted to take a look at her teenage little brother's room and, with no ceremony, went snooping on his computer to see if she found anything suspicious. But she ended up reading something wrong and started mocking him while he got all nervous. Then, out of nowhere, she came close, leaned on him and said that at 17, it would be more worrying if he had nothing to hide. And as if casually, she invited her little brother on a date. The next day, there he was, on the so-called date with his older sister. She loved teasing him and took him downtown, the same place where he had already wanted to fix his phone for some time. But before the outing even began, she was already giving Arata her usual playful provocation. He, obviously uncomfortable, asked her not to do that anymore, reminding her they were siblings. But Banri laughed, saying she'd do that even in a next life, even if the two had become stars. They finally arrived at the phone store. His phone was a wreck, so he decided to get a new one. But then Banri, of course, didn't let it slide. She asked if he didn't have a preference. She explained that just like in love, preferences matter. Those who care about design care about appearance, and those who pay attention to functions value personality. She said you could learn a lot about someone that way, and that she was relieved to see his choices. At that moment, the clerk showed up with the new phone and said, "Couples get a discount on the plan." Arata, desperate, tried to explain that they weren't a couple, but Banri quickly clung to him and said yes, that they were going to sign the plan together. He, of course, couldn't deny it at the time, and they left the store while he tried to understand what on earth was happening with all the women in his life. On the way, Banri saw an ice cream shop and dragged Arata to have ice cream with her. While enjoying the moment, she suggested they take some for everyone, but Arata reminded her that the ice cream would melt. That made her remember their childhood, when the two always fought over ice cream. Then she changed the subject and asked if something was bothering Arata because he seemed strange. He replied with the classic joke, "That's just my face, unfortunately." But he assured her everything was fine. Still, Banri said that if he needed anything, he could always count on her. After all, she was the oldest and worried about him. Meanwhile, Kotono was in her room, looking at the pictures from the day at the park, happy for having had so much fun. But upon receiving a photo of Arata with Banri eating ice cream, she felt a bad sensation as if she were losing him. Even so, she put the phone down and forced herself to get back to studying, trying not to listen to her own head. Banri and Arata had already finished their ice cream when she said she wanted to do something else. But suddenly she received a message and her expression changed. She said she had an appointment and had to leave. Arata asked why she didn't call someone else, like a boyfriend, to go out with her. But she deflected, saying he was too young to understand those things. She left, and, on the way, texted Minami, telling her she couldn't get anything out of Arata about what happened at the park. Minami, who was in the bath, replied that she did hear Uka saying, "I love you, Arata," on that day, but she began to doubt what she heard. After all, an "I love you" between siblings is bizarre, even by anime standards. Even so, Minami decided to text Banri, saying that maybe she had misheard. But she made a classic mistake. She accidentally sent the message to the sisters' group chat. At that moment, Uka was about to take a bath. Minami tried to cover it up and quickly deleted the message, thinking no one had seen it. But out of nowhere, Kotono appeared with the phone in her hand, with an expression of pure shock, clearly having read what she shouldn't have. During dinner, Arata notices that Seiha seems a bit downhearted, as if something had been bothering her for a long time. He tries to ignore it, but her lost look won't leave his mind. Later, while she is alone, he happens to find her. At first, he hesitates, but ends up giving in to his concern and asks if everything is okay. To his surprise, Seiha blurts out that she's dying to play Twister, and since he asked, she invites him to play with her. Confused, Arata wants to know why, out of nowhere, she's so obsessed with such a random game. She confesses with a slightly embarrassed tone that ever since she visited his room, she's been having some weird thoughts about him. She wants to play Twister to test whether she really feels something more, or if it's just in her head. Arata is shocked and tries to refuse, but Seiha throws in his face that she was the one who saved him in the test that day. With no escape, he agrees. Somewhat reluctantly, the game begins, and Arata does everything to stay as far away from her as possible, avoiding any contact. But Seiha, determined to clear up her feelings, starts to deliberately get closer, trying to provoke some reaction in herself. After a few rounds, she notices that Arata is playing defensively and complains that he's being too cautious. In the next round, she positions herself in a way that would leave any guy breathless, and Arata, red as a chili pepper, almost loses control. He tries to quit, but Seiha won't let him, insisting that he continue. In the next move, Arata has to place his foot on the blue circle, which is right under Seiha. He tries to be careful but ends up bumping into her by accident. The contact embarrasses him, leaving him completely dazed by the situation. Seiha, laughing, starts talking about hormones, explaining that the human body releases dopamine when we win something and oxytocin when we feel that chemistry with someone. She's trying to understand when, with Arata, she shifts from one feeling to the other, since he affects her in a way that confuses her. Suddenly, she positions herself in a way that looks straight out of a very daring movie, and Arata, completely lost, starts wishing it were anyone but his sister there. Suddenly, Seiha loses her balance and falls on him, saying her muscles couldn't hold it. Arata is paralyzed, unable to believe he felt his sister's body so closely. To her relief, Seiha says she didn't feel anything special during the game, which means she can move on with her life normally. She thanks Arata for his help and leaves, while he stays frustrated, wondering what kind of madness that was. At that moment, Uka appears, hearing his complaint, and invites him to play video games with her later. Arata is intrigued, wondering why Uka, out of nowhere, wants to play with him alone. He remembers the times she put him in a chokehold every time she lost to him in games, but what really puzzles him is that one time she suddenly said she loved him. In the game, Uka plays with an excitement that looks like a child on Christmas, while Arata stays calm. In a moment of excitement, she throws herself into his lap without realizing it, and Arata, seeing her smile, can't help but find her an adorable little sister. Uka wins the first rounds, but Arata goes into serious mode and starts winning one after another, leaving her devastated. Suddenly, she says she needs to go to the bathroom, but as she passes behind him, she surprises him with a chokehold, just like the old times. Arata begs her to let go, joking that both he and his game character are dying. But what really worries him is feeling her body so close to his, and he does everything to stay calm. Tired of the nonsense, Arata uses his strength to turn the tables and pins Uka to the floor, saying she crossed the line. Only then does he realize the compromising position they are in. Uka stares at him with an intense look, as if he were the prey and she the predator, and blurts out that he has become a man. The phrase catches him off guard, and before he can process it, she runs out of the room, leaving a strange tension in the air. Arata is left confused, trying to understand what she meant by that. Exhausted, he decides to go to sleep, not knowing that Kotono was in the room next door, listening to everything. The next day, the siblings go on with their school routine as if nothing had happened. At the end of the day, Arata's father calls him for a man-to-man talk. He asks if the siblings are okay after the big announcement, and Arata replies that everyone has been more open and expressive since then. In the middle of the conversation with his father, Arata is caught off guard when he asks if he has already found someone special. Meanwhile, the sisters are in the living room, glued to the TV, watching a romantic series where the guy proposes on a bridge. Banri thinks the scene is the most romantic thing in the world, saying that a guy declaring his love in the middle of nature is breathtaking. Uka, however, turns up her nose, thinking it's cheesy to propose in the middle of the woods, as if they were two wanderers. The sisters ask what her dream proposal would be, and Uka, with a sparkle in her eyes, says she wants a rich guy like a boss, proposing in a fancy restaurant with an expensive ring. Seiha, laughing, tells her to take it easy with the imaginary drinks. When the question goes to Seiha, she says she dreams of someone who already has their whole life planned out. How many kids they'll have, how many hot yoga sessions per week, everything neatly set. But Manami cuts the mood, saying that the place or situation doesn't matter. What matters is the person making the proposal. They all agree, nodding, feeling the weight of those words. As they return to their rooms, Kotono is visibly shaken, struggling to hold back her emotions. Suddenly, she bursts out and, to everyone's shock, confesses that she is in love with Arata. Banri tries to calm her down, thinking it's just sisterly love, but Kotono makes it clear with tears in her eyes that she truly loves Arata and wants to marry him. After everything she's seen between the sisters, she declares that they are all her rivals and that she won't give up. Her words echo like thunder, leaving the others speechless. Meanwhile, in the conversation with his father, he reveals his concern that Arata, the future heir of the family, still hasn't found a wife. Curious, Arata asks what made his father choose their mother. He starts joking, saying he fell for her curves but soon becomes serious and confesses that it was her vibrant and powerful soul that won him over. Arata mentions the only photo they have of her, and his father explains that truly beautiful people like her don't like being photographed. He asks if Arata remembers the mysterious 8th room in the house, the one no one has ever entered. Arata laughs, telling him that he and his sisters used to think it was a place to make them disappear. He tells his father that even though he only revealed the truth about the family now, he believes they will all overcome it together, and that he is proud to be the eldest son. As the heir, he promises to take care of his siblings and make sure they all live a happy life. When Arata leaves, his father looks at his wife's photo and murmurs, emotional, how proud he is to have adopted Arata. The next morning, Arata goes out for a run, still thinking about his conversation with his father. Meanwhile, the sisters are in turmoil because of Kotono's confession. When Manami leaves the house, she runs into Arata and becomes nervous, remembering her sister's words. Arata notices something is wrong and insists that she tell him, but Manami, flustered, runs away, saying she needs to train for the tennis tournament. Inside the house, Banri is fighting with the dog, who devoured all the food and is turning into a lazy ball. Arata joins in the scolding, joking that the dog prefers to eat like a glutton than run with him. Banri suggests cutting back on the dog food, which makes the animal so irritated that it bites Arata, as if blaming him for the idea. At that moment, Cheyenne shows up grabbing some breakfast and tells Banri that she's late for a meeting. The two look at Arata, who is on the floor, and laugh, wondering what to do with him. Later, at tennis practice, Manami can't concentrate, still thinking about the bomb Kotono dropped. Even out of shape, she impresses her teammates, who want to know the secret of her talent. Instead of answering seriously, Manami makes up a crazy story about lions and cats. Suddenly, she sees her senior, Nao, and challenges her to a game, betting on a drink. They play a fun match that tests agility, and Manami wins. While resting, Nao reveals that the next tournament will be her last, but that she's not worried, because she believes Manami is the team's great promise. She confesses she thought Manami would be conceited, but saw how hard she works. Nao wishes that the two of them achieve their dreams, which deeply moves Manami. She makes a joke about the motivational speech, leaving Nao embarrassed, who quickly suggests a rematch. Later, Manami learns that Nao couldn't get scholarships for college, so after graduating she had to stop playing tennis and get a job. This makes Manami remember the first time she met Nao, who welcomed her with a warm smile and invited her to play, a match that Manami easily won. Manami is determined to give Nao a farewell with a gold medal at the tournament. It's more than just a competition for her, it's a mission from the heart. At home, the maid calls Arata and lets slip something about Manami. Intrigued, he goes after her at the gym, where she is training. When she sees him approaching, Manami gets startled, almost dropping the weights. Out of nowhere, Arata proclaims himself her trainer. She complains, saying she doesn't need anyone bossing her around, but he cuts her off, revealing that he knows about her injury. The maid saw Manami bandaging her ankles, and Arata makes it clear that he won't leave her side while she trains. Meanwhile, in the privacy of her room, Uka can't get Kotono's shocking confession out of her head. The sisters wanted to believe it was just a phase, but Seiha throws cold water on the idea. Now that they know they're no longer bound by blood, Kotono's love for Arata must be taken seriously. The thought leaves Uka restless, brooding over it until late at night. Back at the gym, Arata helps Manami stretch to ease the pain in her ankle. While helping her, he remembers the times they used to do this together, but now he notices how her body has changed. Softer skin, more defined curves. He shakes his head to push those thoughts away and asks if she told the team about her injury. Manami confesses she hasn't, and Arata starts scolding her, but she interrupts. With her eyes shining, she says she wants to win the tournament not just for herself, but for someone very special. After stretching, Manami turns the tables and helps Arata stretch. When she leans against his back, he feels her body very close, but to his surprise, she doesn't even seem to notice how close they are. As he leaves the gym, Arata bumps into Kotono, who freezes when she sees him. It's the first time they've been alone since that embarrassing incident in the bathroom. Nervous, she asks if he was with Manami and if she was acting strange. Arata, still embarrassed from the moment in the gym, assures her she wasn't. He tries to probe if Kotono knows something, but she blushes and runs off to her room, leaving him confused. Days later, Manami shines in the tournament semifinals, ignoring the pain in her ankle and leading the team to the finals. Outside the bus, her teammates congratulate her, but as she gets on, she feels a sharp pain in her ankle and finally realizes how badly she's hurt. At home, Arata keeps helping with the stretches, but Manami tells him that after confessing the injury to the coach, he assigned her a physical trainer. Arata understands that he'll be fired after the final, but she thanks him for the support with a sincere smile. The next morning, Arata, with his abs showing, walks into the kitchen where Banri is having breakfast. He tries to warn her about eating only cereal, but she counters, joking that if she gains weight, he'll have to do hot cardio with her. Arata asks about Manami, and Banri says she hasn't seen her all day. Seiha shows up, also looking for Manami, which makes everyone worried. When Cheyenne and the others arrive, they notice Manami's sneakers are at home, which means she isn't at the final with the team. Desperate, they look for her in her room, but nothing. Suddenly, Manami shows up, calm, saying she just went to the convenience store. When asked about the final, she dodges, assuring them everything's under control. Suspicious, Arata goes to her room, expecting to find her crying. But to his surprise, she's there, devouring snacks like nothing happened. Arata insists he's worried, and Manami confesses. After the coach learned about her injury, she was taken off the team to protect her future. He asks if she's okay with that, since she wanted so badly to win for someone special. Manami shrugs, saying she had no choice, but her forced smile doesn't fool Arata. As he leaves, Shion intercepts him and reveals she saw Manami crying alone in the morning, hiding the pain so no one would worry. Determined, Arata goes back, takes Manami by the hand and leads her outside, where Uka and the others wait to support their sister in the final. On the way, stuck in traffic, Manami is lost in thought, remembering how she begged the coach to let her play, saying she knew it was Nao's last chance in tennis. Nao hugged her, grateful, but asked her not to risk her injury for her dream. Arata says he doesn't know if the decision was right, but asks her to give up if she feels any problem and never lie to them or herself again. Meanwhile, the team loses the doubles match, leaving everything in the hands of the singles competition. Still in the car, panic sets in because of the traffic jam. Arata spots rental bikes on the street, and Seiha quickly says she has the app to unlock them. He pulls Manami along, Shion hands over the tennis gear, and everyone wishes her luck. During the bike dash, Arata pedals with all his strength, sweating and gasping, while recalling a moment from the past. At school, they were asked to write something for Mother's Day, but without their mother, everyone struggled, except Manami. She wrote about how their mother's absence united the siblings, always with a smile, even on the worst days. Arata praises her strength, saying that even if she's not a genius, she's a warrior with unique energy, and he prays that all her effort will be rewarded. In the final, Nao wins her singles match, but Manami's substitute has to win to secure the gold. Arata and Manami arrive exhausted from the bike ride. Before she can speak, Arata kneels before the coach, begging him to let Manami play, saying the match is just as important as her future. Nao supports her, and the coach gives in. On the court, with nerves running high, Manami hears the family's cheers from the stands, which calms her. She starts strong, scoring the first point skillfully, but her opponent complicates the game. When Manami thinks she's ahead, the opponent counterattacks, forcing her to use her injured ankle. She scores another point, but the pain is intense, and after an exhausting final, Manami loses. The team cries over the loss, and Manami tries to cheer them up, apologizing and even joking that Nao can slap her for all her talk about winning. But Nao bows, thanking Manami for fighting to make their dream come true, and wishes that the match doesn't affect her future. Manami holds back tears. While the sisters wait for her, they know she's suffering alone. Arata finds her sitting on a bench, blaming herself for disappointing the team, even with their gratitude. She thanks her siblings for running after her and says she's ready to move on. But Arata pulls her into a hug and asks her to stop pretending. In her brother's arms, Manami breaks down, asking what she needs to do to be good enough, to win Wimbledon, to not lose at crucial moments. Arata comforts her, assuring her that with time she'll become stronger. Manami cries like never before, held by him. Days later, Manami still thinks about Arata's effort and the embrace that comforted her, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. Meanwhile, Uka argues with the sisters, insisting that one of Manami's plays was stolen and that one more point would have changed everything. She asks Arata's opinion, but he dodges, saying what matters is that Manami has no regrets. Manami enters the room where the argument is happening and avoids looking Arata in the eyes. Uka, still furious about the game, asks her opinion, but to her sister's annoyance, Manami says she no longer cares about the result and is relieved her injury didn't get worse. She sits right in front of Arata, who starts giving her tips on how to take care of her ankle. Manami responds, but can't bring herself to look at him, keeping her gaze fixed on the floor. Uka, inconsolable, insists that Manami should have won, and waving a ball in the air, tries to reenact the play. The dog, thinking it's playtime, gets all excited. Suddenly, the ball slips from Uka's hand and flies toward Manami. Before the dog can jump on her, Arata leaps and catches the ball, protecting his sister. The move is so quick that Manami almost falls off the chair, completely flustered. He scolds Uka for not being careful and asks if Manami is okay. At that moment, she remembers Oka and Kotono's confessions about Arata, and a shiver runs through her. Could this flutter in her chest be the same her sisters felt? Later, Kotono is locked in her room, brooding over her confession to Arata, when Oka knocks on the door, asking to talk. She comes in, complimenting Kotono's cute room, saying it matches her style. But Kotono, with no patience for small talk, gets straight to the point. Oka then confronts her sister about the love confession for Arata, and offers a shoulder if she needs to vent. Kotono, however, surprises her. She knows Uka also confessed her feelings for Arata during a trip and saw them hugging on the game room floor. Uka, caught off guard, explains it was a misunderstanding. She says she confessed her love for Arata as an ex-twin sister, nothing more, and that nothing happened in the game room, something Kotono also witnessed. Kotono approaches, staring at Uka, and asks, with her heart in her hand, if she really doesn't love Arata. When Uka denies it, Kotono sighs in relief and apologizes for the misunderstanding. But as she leaves the room, Uka can't help thinking about Arata, with a heavy feeling in her chest. Meanwhile, Banri panics, begging one of the siblings to accompany her to nursing school for some mysterious reason. Since no one can help, she turns to reliable Arata. The two sneak into the school, dodging security, and Banri confesses she's terrified of going alone because of ghost stories. Arata, laughing, says the place really does look haunted, which makes Banri cling to him, terrified, begging him to stop scaring her. He's confused about why she chose nursing, but when he asks, Banri dodges the question. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes, and Banri throws herself into Arata's arms, thinking it's a ghost. He explains it's just the wind hitting the windows, but with Banri clinging to him, Arata feels her soft, warm body and tries to pull away. But that makes her even more scared, and she holds on tighter, forcing him to practically carry her. In a tense moment, Arata pulls Banri back and covers her mouth, asking for silence as a guard passes by them. He wonders why they need to hide, since Banri is a student there. When she calls him, Arata realizes in horror that his hand is on her chest. He lets go immediately, red with embarrassment. The situation reminds him of when they used to play together in childhood, but now he feels how much Banri has changed. Her more adult body is impossible to ignore. They finally arrive at their destination, Banri's club room. There, she grabs the handmade dolls she forgot and planned to finish that day. Curious, Arata asks what they are, and Banri tells a moving story. When she entered nursing school, she visited a hospital and saw hospitalized children. Some played happily, but others were sad, isolated. She saw school volunteers cheer up a boy, which inspired her to join the volunteer club. Her plan was to make sure no child left the hospital empty-handed, bringing a doll made by her. Banri reveals that she chose nursing because of their mother. When she visited her at the hospital, she cried when saying goodbye, but a nurse would always comfort her. It was there that she decided she wanted to be like that nurse, bringing joy to people. On the way back, Banri confesses to Arata that she is still embarrassed to tell her sisters the reason she chose nursing. He listens in silence, proud of his sister, as they walk home, hearts full of new emotions. As thanks for accompanying her, Banri teases Arata, saying with a little smirk that he must have liked feeling her body earlier. Embarrassed, Arata doesn't answer and walks off quickly, leaving Banri running after him, terrified at the idea of being alone in the dark. The next day, Banri finishes the dolls and delivers them to the hospitalized children. Happy, she sends a photo to Arata, thanking him for the help, with a heart emoji. Days later, Oka receives the result of the practice test at school. The sisters, curious, ask her grade, and she dodges, saying she got the usual. Everyone laughs, betting that Uka, the eternal straight A student, will probably be the next student council president. Little do they know that this time, Uka got a D, and the weight of it is eating away at her inside. On the weekend, Uka gets ready early to go out, and Arata, intrigued, asks where she's going. She answers, somewhat evasively, that she's going to Yamanashi. Arata is surprised, but Uka shrugs and leaves without giving more details. He is confused since they have no relatives there, and thinks she just needs some time alone after everything that happened. He hopes she'll be back for school day, but when Monday comes and Uka doesn't show up, worry takes over. At school, the sisters feel her absence from their usual group, commenting on how strange it is not to have Uka around. Her friends ask Arata where she is, since Uka has never missed in her life. He tries to calm them, assuring she'll be back, but deep down, he has no idea what's going through his sister's head. At home, Uka's absence drags on, and she's about to miss another day of class, which throws everyone into a panic. They know that if word spreads that Uka ran away, her reputation could go down the drain. Seiha asks Arata if Uka has made contact, and irritated by his calm, demands more action. Suddenly, Banri shows up with a cell phone in her hand, revealing that ever since Uka once lost her phone, she installed a tracker. To everyone's shock, the GPS shows Uka on Mount Fuji. The sisters fall into despair, imagining the worst, but Shion asks for calm, trying to keep the group together. Meanwhile, Uka climbs Mount Fuji alone, determined, and reaches the top, where she decides to spend another night. The innkeeper, surprised, comments that it's rare for someone to stay so long. Uka replies, mysterious, that she needs to see something important. At home, Arata makes a decision. He's going after her. Banri tries to dissuade him, worried, but Seiha encourages him, saying she fully trusts he'll bring Uka back. Arata takes an express train to Fuji. There, he calls Banri, who confirms that Uka is at a lodge further up. With a flashlight in hand, he starts up the path in the dark without hesitation, driven by love for his sister. Impressed, he thinks about how Uka also made this trek alone, but still doesn't understand why she chose Fuji. At home, Manami and Kotono can't sleep, worried. Kotono, more nervous about Arata, tries to explain herself, but Manami, tense, assures he'll be fine. After an hour of walking, Arata reaches the lodge and surprises Uka. She, stunned, asks what he's doing there, and he answers simply that he came to get her. He tells the innkeeper he'll spend the night, and she puts them in the same room, knowing they're siblings. Arata sends a message to the siblings saying he found Uka, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. In the room, the mood gets a bit strange. Uka and Arata realize how awkward it is to share the space. She asks him not to look while she changes clothes, and Arata, turning quickly, feels a knot in his stomach, confused by thoughts he's never had before, even having grown up so close to his sisters. After she changes, they lie down, and Arata says they'll go back home in the morning. To his surprise, Uka refuses to go. He asks why she went to Fuji, but instead of answering, she wants to know if the others are worried. Arata confirms they are, and then Uka opens her heart. She remembers that Mount Fuji was where their parents met. Arata had forgotten, but she tells him that their father, a stranger at the time, carried their mother, sick from the altitude, from the top to the base. With shining eyes, Uka says she believes that each person has a destined partner from birth, as happened to their parents. Then, with a tone that catches Arata off guard, she wonders if that kind of fate also exists in their family. Arata firmly rejects the idea of a destined partner within the family, but Uka confronts him, reminding him that Kotono is truly in love with him in a romantic way. He shakes his head, stubborn, refusing to believe it. Curious, he asks if that's what's keeping her up at night, but Uka doesn't answer, already out, sleeping deeply. As he watches her back, Arata sees his sister, always so confident and arrogant, looking fragile and vulnerable, like any ordinary girl. He tucks the blanket around her carefully and lies down to rest, thinking about the trip home the next day. Upon waking up, however, Uka is no longer there. In her place, a note saying she went back home alone. Suspicious, Arata calls Banri, who checks the tracker and reveals, surprised, that Uka is still at the top of Mount Fuji. Without hesitation, he starts climbing the mountain again. Meanwhile, Uka climbs alone, determined, until she reaches the summit. There, standing under the curious gazes of other visitors, who recognize her from the day before, she seems lost, waiting for something or someone. The fog thickens, and Uka's patience runs out. She starts descending, questioning why the heck she's there, feeling a void grow in her chest. Arata tries to find her on the way, but doesn't see her. Thinking she went down earlier, he returns to the lodge, but the owner says Uka didn't come back and that her things are still there. At home, Banri panics when she loses Uka's signal on the tracker. On the mountain, Uka, distracted, gets lost on the trail. Desperate, she calls for help, but slips and falls into a secluded spot, badly injuring her leg. Alone, with throbbing pain, she screams for help, feeling death looming. In a moment of delirium, her life flashes before her eyes. She remembers the moment when her father gave her their mother's earrings. Curious, she asked how they met, and her father told, with a sparkle in his eyes, how he saved her mother on Mount Fuji, carrying her from the top to the base when she got sick from the altitude. To Uka, it was like a fairy tale, with her father being the prince who found his princess on Japan's highest peak. He promised that one day she would also find her prince. Uka snaps out of the trance, realizing the real danger. She looks at the earrings which slip from her hand and fall into the fog. Desperate, she searches for them until a reflection of light guides her to them. When she raises her eyes, she sees the source of the light, Arata, with the flashlight, like a beacon in the darkness. Her heart races, remembering her father's words about destiny. Before, Uka always vented to her father, who listened with a patient smile. But after the recent revelations about the family, she closed herself off, unable to talk like before, even when he insisted. Arata sees Uka's injured leg and, without a second thought, tells her to get on his back. She tries to act tough, saying she can walk on her own, but Arata cuts her off, serious. Cut it out and get on now. At home, anxiety takes over the sisters, and even their father, worried, cancels a meeting and rushes back. On the mountain, the rain gets heavier, making every step harder for Arata as he carries Uka. Panting, he feels the weight but doesn't give up. That's when Uka, voice choked, confesses why she went to Fuji. She saw a video on TikTok that said, taking a cherished object of someone deceased to the top could let you meet that person one last time. But up there, she realized she isn't the biological daughter of their mother and that she doesn't have a real family. With tears streaming down, she says she can't talk to their father like before anymore, that her grades plummeted and her head is a mess. She doesn't know what to do anymore. Arata, with his heart tight, replies that even without blood ties, he is still her twin. That's why he found her. He promises he will always be there, with a shoulder ready for her to cry on. Moved, Uka breaks down in tears, crying on his shoulder as they descend. At the lodge, they get ready to return, and upon reaching the base of the mountain, they find Banri, Manami, Seiha, and the others, who rushed there, worried sick. Banri, seeing Uka's leg, goes mom mode instantly, taking care of her with all her affection. The sisters reveal they came because of Manami, who insisted they go after them. Arata thanks them, and Manami, blushing, looks away, shy. On the car ride home, The sisters ask Uka why she ran off to Mount Fuji. Not wanting to reveal the truth, she says, with a half smile, that she just wanted to visit the place where their parents met. Everyone accepts the explanation warmly without questioning, but Uka feels a tightness in her chest. The siblings' kindness, even after the trouble she caused, makes her feel even more guilty for hiding the real reason. Suddenly, Arata, exhausted, collapses onto her shoulder and falls asleep, breathing heavily. Uka turns red, remembering a time years ago when she fought with Arata for not being chivalrous and taught that a man should offer his shoulder for a woman to rest on. Playful. Arata shot back asking for equality, and Uka agreed that a woman can also offer her shoulder, but only to her love. Now, with Arata sleeping on her shoulder, her words echo, and she can't help but see him as something beyond a brother. With her heart racing, she lets him rest. When they arrive home while unloading the car, Uka notices that Arata doesn't wake up and is too warm. Shion quickly carries him to the bedroom and lays him on the bed. At that moment, their father appears, worried about his children. The sisters tell how Arata carried Uka in the rain, and he, proud, praises his son and tells everyone to rest. Later, Uka finds her father and opens up, confessing how hard it was to face him as before after the revelations about the family. But after what she experienced on Fuji with Arata, she realizes she still loves him deeply. With a tight hug, which the father returns with a smile, she feels the weight on her heart lighten. The next day, Uka returns to school and is welcomed enthusiastically by her friends, but everyone feels for Arata, who is sick. At home, Banri prepares a hearty porridge for him. When she finishes, she asks who wants to take it to Arata. Manami and Kotono volunteer immediately, exchanging suspicious glances, each wondering why the other is so excited. With a little grin, Banri asks Manami to take it, whispering that she's afraid Kotono might do something weird in Arata's room, not knowing that Manami also has her own bubbling feelings. Uka shows up, and Seiha teases, saying that more than anyone, she should take care of Arata after what he did for her. Uka dodges, calling Arata a muscle-brained idiot and saying he'll be fine. She goes to shower thinking about what to do, and when she comes out, says the bathroom is free. In secret, however, she goes to Arata's room, saying she only came to get the porridge bowl. Alone with him, Uka opens up. With a trembling voice, she apologizes for what happened and says how happy she is that he saved her. She confesses that she wanted to ask their mother on Fuji if it was right to fall in love with him. Even without the mother's answer, the rescue and Arata's words on the mountain made her certain of her own feelings. While the sisters joke downstairs, unaware of anything, Uka, on impulse, leans in and gives Arata a gentle kiss on the lips as he sleeps deeply. The kiss lingers, laden with emotion, and she leaves the room with the bowl, promising to return. But, without her knowing, Arata opens his eyes, stunned, thinking, "What the heck is going on here?" Days later, to get some fresh air, Arata and the sisters go to the family's summer house, a place full of memories from vacations together. This time, their father isn't there, so it's just the siblings. Arata remembers the ritual of dividing the rooms when Banri sneaks up behind, joking that they could shake the bed together. He scolds her, blushing, telling her to stop with those crazy ideas. When he looks at Uka, the memory of the kiss hits him like lightning, and he wonders what she meant by liking him. Uka, noticing that he's lost in thought, asks if he's okay. Arata tries to dodge it, but when he sees her lips, the same ones that kissed him, he panics and runs off. Later, in the middle of a thoughtful bath, Shion suddenly walks in, warning that Arata left the door open. Surprised, Arata asks where he had been, and Shion confesses that he went out to look for his biological parents, the real reason for the trip to the summer house. He didn't find them, but upon hearing Arata say that, despite the curiosity, he only considers their father to be his true father, because blood ties don't define family. Shion agrees. He says he has gotten over the search for his biological parents, and now sees their current family as the true one. The next morning, while everyone sleeps, Uka wakes up and notices that Arata is gone. She finds him in the sauna tent, warming up his body. Silent, she watches, her heart full of questions about what she feels and what the future holds for the two of them. Arata, lost in thoughts about Shion's search for his biological parents and Uka's confession, ends up overheating in the sauna and leaves the tent, sweating buckets. To his surprise, Uka is outside waiting for him, which makes his heart race even more. With her so close and without her knowing that he was awake during the kiss, Arata feels his head spin. With a mischievous smile, Uka invites him to a resistance test in the sauna. Embarrassed, he tries to refuse, saying she can go alone, but to his surprise, Uka sits next to him, making him even more flustered. Knowing her feelings, he insists she do the test, and the two go into the sauna like they did in the old days. But unlike before, Arata can't take his eyes off her body, glistening with sweat from the heat. Suddenly, Uka asks, out of nowhere, if he's thinking about getting a girlfriend. To avoid the awkward mood, he answers that he's not interested at the moment. The heat becomes unbearable, and Arata leaves the sauna, gasping. Concerned, Uka asks if he still likes Lala, his old crush. Thoughtful, Arata says that despite the past, he doesn't feel anything for her anymore, and that he's not pathetic enough to be stuck in the past. Relieved, Uka flashes a bright smile and runs to the shower, but alone, she starts to question herself. She remembers the times they were together in the sauna, asking about crushes, and realizes that since that time, she already felt something for Arata, even if she didn't admit it. Meanwhile, Arata reflects on Uka's feelings, comparing them with Kotono's confession, and decides that he needs to do something to clear everything up. At that moment, Manami shows up and invites him out. To his surprise, she takes him to a flower garden, a place that doesn't match her sporty style. He notices that Manami is different, wearing a skirt and looking more feminine. Looking around, he sees couples on romantic dates and wonders why Manami chose that place. Suddenly, she asks what his ideal wife would be like. Caught off guard, Arata gives a generic answer, saying he wants someone he feels comfortable with. The question makes him remember the conversations with Uka, leaving him confused. Then he notices a price tag hanging from Manami's skirt. She tries to rip it off clumsily, and Arata offers to help. Since he can't, he jokes that he'll bite the tag off, making Manami turn red with embarrassment as he carefully removes the tag with his teeth. After that, they enjoy the outing, taking photos to save the moment, and 2 hours fly by. Arata suggests going home when Manami, shy, confesses that she's in love with someone. Not knowing who it is, Arata says he's happy for his little sister. Reflecting on the day, he realizes that Manami was training a date with him as a guinea pig. She thanks him, saying the outing helped her a lot, and runs to buy souvenirs, picking out matching items for them as a token of gratitude. Arata smiles, seeing her happiness, but Manami's confession and Uka's come back to mind, leaving him stunned. The next day, the siblings go to a waterfall to swim, as they used to, all in swimwear, enjoying the day. Some guys in the back drool over the girls, thinking it's a photo shoot, and Shion teases Arata, saying they have VIP seats to watch their sisters. Annoyed, Arata reminds him they're his sisters, but when he looks again, strange thoughts cross his mind, and he forces himself to stop. Everyone enjoys themselves in their own way, and Uka jumps from the waterfall, like in the old days, full of energy. Laughing, Seiha comments that people who like extreme sports are usually kind of dim-witted. Shion recalls that Seiha used to jump with Uka, holding hands, but she dodges, saying the old Seiha was dumb as a doorknob. Uka invites Arata to jump, but seeing her so radiant, he refuses, afraid of betraying himself with improper thoughts. She calls Manami, who says she'll only jump if Arata goes along. He gives in, and Manami grabs his hand before they jump together. Seiha throws herself in right after, and Arata, seeing everyone having fun, realizes that despite being older, they're still the same siblings who love a bit of chaos. Suddenly, Seiha panics. Arata asks what happened, and she, red-faced, confesses that she lost the top of her bikini in the fall. Arata panics when he realizes the situation with Seiha, but soon spots the bikini top floating in the water. Seiha rushes to grab it, but Arata, without thinking, dives in and retrieves it first, handing it to her with a red face. He tries to convince himself that they're just siblings, but when Seiha steps out of the water, the black bikini clinging to her body stirs thoughts that leave him shaken. Before he can pull himself together, Banri announces that she wants to swim and practically drags Arata into the water, ignoring his protests. Manami and Uka watch with a mix of jealousy and tension as the two enter the waterfall. Some guys in the back whisper, drooling over the scene, and Arata, though irritated, can't blame them. Banri, with her curves, draws attention naturally. Suddenly, she jumps on his back, pressing her body against his, making Arata's head spin. With a gentle tone, Banri says that if he ever needs to vent, she'll always be there for him. Arata stays quiet, Uka's kiss still burning in his memory, and only promises to be a brother who won't worry her. But this reminds Banri of what happened with Kotono, and the mood grows heavy. They approach the waterfall, and Banri insists on going closer. She presses so tightly against him that Arata slips, and the two fall into the water. In the silence that follows, Banri murmurs that she loves him, but the sound of the waterfall drowns out her words. Arata doesn't hear, but Kotono, who is nearby, hears everything, her heart tightening. Later, when Arata is alone, Kotono calls him over to a vending machine nearby, wanting a moment alone. He senses she wants to say something, but when he asks, she dodges. Arata remembers when Kotono nearly drowned in a river years ago, and she laughs, saying she's a grown girl now who won't drown. He looks at her, and the confusing thoughts return, thanks to Uka's kiss that still haunts him. At the machine, Kotono hesitates, wanting to say something, but freezes. Arata gently encourages her to open up, promising he'll always be there for her. Suddenly, Kotono breaks down in tears, catching him by surprise. She blames herself for acting on impulse after everything that happened with the sisters, but Arata reassures her, saying that being by her side is his duty as the older brother. Kotono's tears bring back memories of when she was pampered by their father, always treated as special. This made the sisters exclude her from certain things, and Kotono felt that if she disappeared, nothing would change. Until the day she nearly drowned in the river. While everyone stood frozen, Arata dove in and saved her. Afterwards, she apologized for being a burden, but he, as the eldest brother, promised he would always protect her. From that moment, Kotono began to see Arata differently, not just as a brother, but as someone who always put her first, someone she wished could be more. When they return to the others, Banri scolds them for taking too long. But Manami and Uka notice that Kotono managed to get some time alone with Arata, leaving them torn between jealousy and insecurity. That night, following tradition, the siblings go to a nearby church for a candlelit evening. Arata, still shaken by Uka's kiss, starts to panic, knowing that if he does nothing, things might only get worse for her. He decides to find a solution but stumbles upon Kotono, Manami, and Uka talking in secret. He stops, hidden, and hears Kotono apologizing for complicating everything with her love confession for Arata. She reveals that she saw the message Manami sent and knows about Uka's confession at the amusement park. With tears, Kotono reaffirms that she truly loves Arata and asks forgiveness for her selfishness. To her surprise, Manami confesses that she also loves Arata romantically and that she will no longer hide it. She declares that, from now on, they will be rivals in love. Uka then drops the bomb. She too loves Arata, and although she denied it for a long time, she's now certain of it. The three stare at each other, and as sisters, they make a pact. Whoever Arata chooses to love, the other two will hold no grudges and will continue to love each other as family. Arata, who heard everything, is left in shock, cursing destiny for this mess. What no one knows, however, is that among them, there is a pair of siblings by blood not yet revealed, waiting to turn the story upside down. And so the anime ends. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.